All right, so get this. We're going to dive into something pretty wild today. Imagine a single X post, right? Like one little post potentially swaying an entire election. That's exactly what's going down in Germany right now. And we're going to try and figure out how that's even possible. We're talking about Elon Musk, the AFD party, and a whole heaping pile of controversy. So, to make sure we cover all the angles, we've got reports from Axios, Al Jazeera, CNBC, even Salon, a bunch of others. So, yeah, let's just jump right into it.
What I find really fascinating about this whole story is that it kind of brings together all these like global trends that we've been seeing, like the rise of populism, the crazy impact of social media, and then you have these powerful individuals, right, who can come in and like totally rock the boat in traditional politics.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. So, okay, let's set the scene here, right? We're talking about Germany. Germany's getting ready for a snap election in February 2025. Now, just in case anyone out there isn't totally up on their German politics, they have this system, right, where it's pretty rare for a single party to win a majority. So that means they got to form these coalitions to actually govern. It's like a political team up, you know?
Exactly, yeah. And in this upcoming election, things are even more interesting because the current government, the center-left coalition government, just collapsed, which is what triggered this whole snap election thing.
Okay, so we got this kind of chaotic situation brewing, right?
Yeah.
And right into the middle of it all steps the AFD, the Alternative for Germany party. And right now they're actually polling second, which means they could become like the biggest opposition force in the Bundestag. That's their parliament, basically their version of Congress.
Right. And it's important to understand that the AFD, they're considered a far-right anti-immigration party. And get this, they've actually been labeled a suspected extremist case by the German authorities.
Hold on, suspected extremists. Like, how extreme are we talking here?
Well, some of their branches have actually been classified as confirmed extremist, which gives you an idea of how seriously they're being taken.
Wow, okay, confirmed extremist. That's pretty intense.
It is. They've downplayed Germany's Nazi past, and they have these pretty strong anti-immigrant and Eurosceptic views.
You're a skeptic. Okay, gotta admit, not totally up on that term.
Yeah, so basically it means they're skeptical of the European Union, right?
Yeah.
They're not really fans of a lot of its policies.
Got it. So yeah, they're definitely stirring up some serious controversy. But, okay, where does Elon Musk fit into all of this?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. So Musk, he recently posted on X, right? And he just straight up said, only the AFD can save Germany. And, I mean, that basically threw a massive wrench into the whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, we all know Musk's a pretty big deal. He's a mega donor and advisor to the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. He's even been picked to lead the Department of Government Efficiency.
Exactly. So it's not like he's just some random dude with an opinion, This guy is incredibly influential, and his endorsement of the AFD, it sent shockwaves through, like, the entire German political landscape.
And let's be real, this isn't exactly a one-off for him, right? I mean, he's endorsed some other pretty right-wing figures, like that Italian prime minister, what's her name, Giorgia Meloni, and then there was Nigel Farage over in the UK.
Yeah, you're definitely seeing a pattern emerging here. Some people might say he's just exercising his right to free speech, which of course he is. But when you think about how much global influence he has and the fact that he's about to have a super powerful position in the U.S. government, well, it raises some pretty serious questions. It's kind of like, what is he really drawn to in these figures? It makes you think, is it really just about ideology, or is it something more than that?
That's a really interesting point. So, okay, we've got this controversial party, right? They're gaining traction in Germany. And now we have one of the most powerful guys in the world basically backing them up. I think to really understand how big of a deal this is, we kind of need to like zoom in on the AFD and see what they're all about. I mean, they've said some pretty wild stuff, haven't they?
Oh, yeah, for sure. One of their leaders, Bjorn Höcke, he actually called the Berlin Holocaust Memorial a monument of shame. And he even went so far as to say that Germany needs to completely reevaluate how it remembers its Nazi past, which, I mean, in Germany, given their history, that's a huge deal.
I can't even imagine saying something like that. It's almost like he's trying to downplay the Holocaust, which is just, I mean, it's horrific.
And it's not just him either. Alexander Goland, another prominent figure of the AFD, he's talked about fighting an invasion of foreigners.
And then wasn't there that whole thing about a master plan or something? Like some AFD leaders got together to discuss deporting millions of people?
Yeah, that was back in January this year, 2024. It came out that they had this secret meeting. and they were talking about this master plan that involved potentially deporting millions of people with immigrant backgrounds. We're talking about people who would even become German citizens.
Seriously.
It was a really big deal. It sparked a lot of concern. People were really worried about what could happen if the AFD ever got real power. Like, could they actually try to carry out this plan? It raised a lot of questions about discrimination and human rights violations.
So just to recap here, we've got the AFD, a far-right party with some pretty extreme views. They're gaining more and more ground in Germany. And now Elon Musk, this global influencer who's about to be a big deal in the U.S. government, he's publicly endorsed them.
It's a total powder keg. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, for sure. So to really get a handle on what this all means, we need to look at how German politicians and the public have reacted to all this. Like, what kind of fallout are we seeing from Musk's move?
Well, let's just say the reaction has been pretty explosive.
Right. I bet. We'll delve into all that in part 2 of this deep dive. Okay, so last time we were talking about Elon Musk endorsing the AFD, and you mentioned that things got a little heated over in Germany. I'm guessing German politicians weren't exactly doing the happy dance.
Yeah, you could say that. It's been a pretty wild ride reaction-wise. I mean, you've got shock, outrage, pretty much across the board. Mainstream politicians, they're not holding back. They're condemning Musk's statement.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. But, like, what does that actually look like? Are we talking, like, strongly worded tweets, or are we talking full-on diplomatic meltdowns?
Oh, no, it's gone way beyond just online grumbling. You've got people like Dennis Radtijk. He's a member of the European Parliament. He's from the center-right Christian Democratic Union. And he straight up called Musk's intervention, quote-unquote, threatening, irritating, and unacceptable.
Whoa.
And he even went as far as to call Musk a threat to democracy in the Western world.
Okay, hold on. Threat to democracy. That's a pretty serious accusation.
Yeah, it is. And I think it speaks to a larger concern that a lot of German lawmakers have, which is, you've got this billionaire who's about to be a pretty powerful figure in the U.S. government. And he's basically trying to, interfere in their election.
I see what you mean.
It's like they're suddenly realizing that someone on the other side of the world can just waltz in and have that kind of influence.
Right, right.
It's not just about endorsing a party. It's about having the power to manipulate public opinion.
Okay, so how has Chancellor Scholz responded to all this? I mean, his government just collapsed, so he's going to be feeling the pressure.
Yeah, well, Scholz has been a bit more diplomatic, let's say. He basically acknowledged freedom of opinion, saying that people can say things that are, quote, incorrect and do not contain good political advice.
Okay, so a little bit of shade thrown there.
Just a tad.
Yeah, I guess he has to be careful. I mean, Germany and the U.S., they're pretty tight.
For sure. It's a delicate situation.
Definitely. But, okay, beyond the political reactions, what about the actual German election? Like, how could Musk's endorsement actually affect the outcome?
Right, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Can one little X post actually swing an entire election?
Well, I'm no fortune teller. But there are a few ways this could play out. First off, Musk's endorsement, it could definitely boost the AFD's visibility.
Yeah.
Especially among certain demographics.
But who are we talking about here?
Well, the AFD's message, it tends to resonate with voters who feel like, globalization and all these economic changes, they've kind of left them behind.
Okay.
So people who are feeling forgotten, unheard, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Musk, he's seen as this, disruptor, this innovator, right? So you might actually make the AFD seem more appealing to voters who are just looking for something different, something to shake things up.
I see. It's not just about agreeing with their policies. It's about that whole anti-establishment vibe.
Exactly.
Like Musk's rebellious image is rubbing off on them.
That's a good way to put it. And that's what makes this whole thing so unpredictable. I mean, we're talking about deep-seated social and economic anxieties. It's really hard to say how Musk's endorsement will factor into all of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. But, okay, let's say the AFD does well in the election. Wouldn't that make it harder to actually form a government afterwards? Especially since most of the other parties don't want to work with them.
Absolutely. That's a huge concern. If the AFD gains enough ground, it could create a political deadlock. It could make it almost impossible to form a stable government.
So basically, Germany could be headed for some serious political instability.
It's definitely a possibility.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential impact on the election. But you mentioned earlier that this isn't just a German thing. What did you mean by that?
Well, think about it like this. The AFD, they're kind of like the German version of, Think of a similar political party in your country,
Mm.
but maybe with a little bit more edge, let's say.
Okay, so you're talking about the rise of far-right parties in other countries.
Exactly. We've seen similar movements gaining traction all over the place. Places like the Netherlands, Austria, Finland, and even beyond Europe.
Right, and a lot of those parties, they were pretty happy about Trump's election back in 2016, which of course Musk was a big supporter of.
That's a really important point. This isn't just about individual countries or elections. It's about a global shift, a wave of populism and nationalism. That's challenging the way things have always been done.
Okay, so we've zoomed out a bit. We've put the AFD into this bigger global context. But what does it all mean? Like, what are the long-term implications of this trend?
Well, that's a question we'll try to tackle in the final part of our deep dive. We'll explore the bigger picture, the potential consequences, and hopefully leave you with some things to think about.
Sounds like we're about to get philosophical.
Just a bit.
All right, I'm ready. Let's do it. Okay, so deep divers, we're back and ready to wrap up our exploration into this whole German election situation. Elon Musk, the AFD, far-right movements, you name it, we've covered it. But I think the big question we need to answer is, what does it all actually mean? Like, what's the takeaway here?
I think if we kind of step back and look at the big picture here,
Yeah.
it really raises some profound questions
Yeah.
about the future of democracy itself, especially in a world where you have billionaires like Elon Musk,
Yeah.
who can just wield this incredible amount of influence.
Yeah, it's kind of scary when you think about it. I mean, we tend to think of elections as, these contests between parties, between ideas, and it's the voters who decide. But now you have these incredibly powerful individuals who can just come in and amplify certain voices. They can shape the narrative. They can maybe even tip the scales.
That's exactly right. And it's not just about elections either. I mean, we're seeing a decline in trust in institutions across the board. Misinformation is spreading like wildfire. Societies are becoming more and more polarized. It's like the very foundations of democracy are being tested.
So where do we even go from here? Like, what can we do as individuals in the face of all these massive forces?
That's a tough question, and honestly, I don't think there are any easy answers. But I think it starts with awareness. We need to understand the forces at play, the tactics that are being used, and the potential consequences if we just sit back and let it all happen.
So knowledge is power, basically. The more we understand about how these systems work, the better equipped we are to navigate them, to make informed decisions.
Absolutely, but it's not just about individual knowledge. It's also about collective action. We need to be having open and honest conversations. We need to challenge misinformation when we see it. And we need to hold those in power accountable, whether we agree with them or not.
You're talking about like a more active and engaged citizenry.
Exactly. We can't afford to be passive bystanders anymore. The world's changing too fast, and the stakes are too high.
Okay, I think that's a really powerful message and a great way to wrap up this whole deep dive. We started with the German election, right? We explored the AFD and their controversial views. We talked about Elon Musk and his game-changing endorsement. And we even zoomed out to look at how this all fits into this global trend. It's been a wild ride, that's for sure.
It has.
What really stood out to you the most in all this?
For me, it's this tension between freedom of speech and the need to protect democratic institutions from those who would seek to exploit them or undermine them. It's a really complicated issue. There are no easy answers. But it's a conversation we all need to be having.
Absolutely, and it's a conversation that's probably going to get even more important as we move forward. So to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep engaging. We'll catch you next time.